At 91 years old, Pat Boone is finally sharing the real story about Elvis Presley. Pat Boone was born with the name Charles Eugene Boone on June 1, 1934, in Jacksonville, Florida. He became one of America's longest-lasting and most talented entertainers, known for his clean-cut style, strong faith, and ability to adapt to different types of music. Pat grew up in Nashville, Tennessee, where he learned about Southern traditions and Christian values. These beliefs became a huge part of who he was as a person and as a performer. He went to several colleges, including David Lipscomb College, now called Lipscomb University, and North Texas State University, before finishing his education at Columbia University. There, he earned a degree in speech and English, which helped him become the polished and well-spoken performer people loved. Boone became famous in the 1950s, an important time when rock and roll music was just starting to change everything. He quickly became popular as a clean-cut alternative to the wild and rebellious stars of the time, like Elvis Presley. People knew him for his smooth singing voice and his wholesome, good guy image. Boone started his career by recording new versions of rhythm and blues songs that were originally sung by black artists. Some people praised him for helping to bring R&B music to white audiences, while others criticized him for taking music from black culture. Even so, his versions of songs like Ain't That a Shame, originally by Fats Domino, Tutti Frutti by Little Richard, and I Almost Lost My Mind by Ivory Joe Hunter, became huge hits. These songs helped introduce many people to types of music they might never have heard otherwise. By the late 1950s, Boone had become one of the biggest stars in American music. He had more than 38 songs make it into the top 40 on the music charts, and he sold over 45 million records. 6 of his songs reached #1 on the charts. His smooth love songs and romantic singing style won over millions of fans, and his super clean image made him popular with parents who didn't trust rock and roll music. Pat Boone's popularity wasn't just a short-lived thing. During the 1950s, he was second only to Elvis Presley in chart success, and he even competed with Elvis for fans. Boone's success wasn't just on the radio either. He also became a big TV star, hosting his own variety show called The Pat Boone Chevy Showroom from 1957 to 1960. This weekly TV program featured both famous musicians and new talent, and it made Boone even more of a household name. Besides his success in music and television, Pat Boone also had a career in movies. He starred in more than a dozen films, including April Love, 1957, Bernardine, 1957, Journey to the Center of the Earth, 1959, and State Fair, 1962. His movie roles were a lot like his public image, respectable, romantic, and morally good. This helped keep him popular during a time when people's tastes were starting to change. Hollywood loved Boone as the perfect leading man for youth-focused, feel-good movies. He was also known for refusing to take roles that went against his personal values. This sometimes meant he couldn't get certain jobs, but it also made his reputation as a wholesome icon even stronger. Pat Boone's influence went way beyond just entertainment. As a devoted Christian, he used his fame to promote faith-based values. He often appeared at religious events and wrote books about Christian living, family, and personal morals. He wrote several best-selling books, including Twixt 12 and 20, a guide for teenagers that sold millions of copies and really connected with both teenagers and their parents. He also got involved in various charity work and political causes, especially those that aligned with conservative and religious beliefs. Boone was never afraid to speak his mind, even when his opinions were different from what most people thought. He often used his celebrity status to influence discussions about moral and cultural topics. In the 1990s, Boone surprised his fans and critics when he released In a Metal Mood, No More Mr. Nice Guy, an album where he sang heavy metal covers in his classic crooner style. Dressed in black leather, Boone appeared on the American Music Awards and got a lot of media attention. While the album was meant to be funny and was a loving tribute to rock and metal classics, it showed that Boone could reinvent himself and take chances even late in his career. Despite mixed reactions, the album became a cult hit and introduced him to younger fans. Over his many decades in the entertainment business, Pat Boone achieved an amazing list of accomplishments. More than 50 million records sold, over 2,300 recorded songs, multiple gold albums, and a reputation as one of the most influential crossover artists in American pop music. But beyond all the numbers is a legacy built on integrity, consistency, and faith. Boone's refusal to give up his values just to become more famous became a defining part of who he was. Unlike many stars from his time whose careers were damaged by scandals or wild behavior, Boone lived a steady and scandal-free life. He stayed married to his high school sweetheart, Shirley Foley, daughter of country music legend Red Foley, until she died in 2019 after 65 years of marriage. Together they had 4 daughters, including Debbie Boone, who also became a successful musician with the hit song, You Light Up My Life. Pat Boone's life and career represent a time in entertainment history that's now gone, a time when artists were judged not just by their talent, but by the values they stood for. In many ways, he remains a symbol of wholesome American culture, often remembered more for what he believed in than for any particular performance or record. But it would be wrong to ignore his huge contributions to making early rock and roll popular, his success in multiple types of entertainment, and his groundbreaking role as a crossover artist. As of the 2020s, Pat Boone has continued to perform, speak, and support causes he believes in. Now in his 90s, he remains an energetic and well-spoken figure, sharing his thoughts on music, life, and faith. His ability to stay in the public eye and remain culturally relevant despite changing times and shifting attitudes shows both his talent and his determination. Now, in the final years of an extraordinary life and career, 91-year-old Pat Boone, the iconic American singer, actor, and author, has opened up with honest reflections about his complicated and often misunderstood relationship with one of the most legendary figures in music history, Elvis Presley. For decades, fans and music historians have wondered about the real nature of the relationship between Boone and Presley, 2 huge stars of the 1950s who helped shape the rock and roll revolution. While both were young, charismatic, and chart-topping performers who found themselves at the center of America's cultural transformation, their paths were very different in style, image, and personal beliefs. In recent years, Boone has felt a growing desire to set the record straight. With the clarity and wisdom that comes from a life well lived, he has begun to share more personal stories, unspoken feelings, and observations about Presley that he had kept private before out of respect for his fellow entertainer and the intense public attention that surrounded them both. Boone describes how during the peak of their careers, the media often exaggerated or made up stories of rivalry between them, creating a story of competition that was far more sensationalized than true. Boone now reveals that he had always admired Elvis for his raw talent, deep commitment to music, and the incredible magnetism he brought to the stage. He remembers early encounters with Presley at recording studios and television shows, describing him as surprisingly shy when he wasn't performing, but fiercely dedicated to his craft. Boone was one of the few people in the industry who recognized early on that Elvis wasn't just a trendsetter or a heartthrob. He was a revolutionary force who would leave a permanent mark on American culture. But Boone also acknowledges the ways their careers went in different directions. While Pat built his reputation on clean-cut, wholesome performances that matched his devoted Christian upbringing, Elvis embraced a bolder, more rebellious image that made him an icon of youth rebellion and freedom. Boone reflects honestly on how this difference affected their public images, noting that while he was often seen as the safe alternative to Presley, he never resented the king of rock and roll's popularity. In fact, he often felt that Elvis's success opened doors for other performers, including himself, by expanding what popular music could be. In telling the truth now, Boone also shares his deeper sadness over the tragic path of Elvis's life. He admits that he was heartbroken by Presley's slow decline into addiction and isolation, especially knowing how much pressure came with being such a larger-than-life figure. Boone recalls wishing that he could have helped Elvis more, that perhaps if there had been more honest conversations, more grounding friendships, or more spiritual guidance, things could have turned out differently. Boone, a lifelong advocate of faith-based living, expresses his belief that Elvis was searching for something deeper, a connection to God, to purpose, to peace, but was too often surrounded by people who fed his fame instead of nourishing his soul. Boone now admits that although he initially underestimated Elvis's lasting impact, he quickly came to respect the depth of his musical genius and emotional expressiveness. Elvis had something raw, something you couldn't teach, Boone reveals. He tapped into something primal that spoke directly to people's hearts and souls. He wasn't just a performer, he was a phenomenon. In his reflections, Boone describes moments of genuine friendship, casual conversations about faith, fame, and the pressures of sudden stardom, shared performances on early television shows, and even late-night phone calls where both men shared their fears and dreams. Pat Boone also acknowledges the ways their careers diverged, not just musically, but spiritually. A devoted Christian throughout his life, Boone remained rooted in traditional values and often used his platform to promote moral themes, while Elvis wrestled more publicly with inner demons, fame, and personal turmoil. Still, Boone refuses to judge him. Instead, he offers empathy and insight into the toll that stardom took on Elvis, calling him a sensitive soul crushed by the weight of being larger than life. Boone's late-life reflections are filled with a mix of admiration, sorrow, and gratitude. He speaks of Elvis not just as a cultural icon, but as a vulnerable man, brilliant, tormented, generous, and misunderstood. "It took me a long time to see past the glitter and noise," Boone confesses. "But when I did, I saw someone who longed for peace, for love, for a place to rest. I wish we had talked more in the end. I wish I could have helped him." Now, as Boone looks back on a friendship that was more subtle and respectful than sensational, he finds peace in remembering the moments of kindness, admiration, and quiet understanding they shared. "Elvis was a good man," Boone has said in recent interviews, his voice heavy with emotion. "He had a beautiful heart. He struggled like we all do. Only his struggles were played out in front of the world. I wish more people had seen the real Elvis, not just the performer, but the person." For Pat Boone, speaking the truth about Elvis at this stage of life isn't just about clearing up old myths. It's about honoring a fellow artist who, despite personal demons and public pressures, changed the world with his music. And in doing so, Boone also reaffirms his own legacy, not just as a performer who once rivaled Presley on the charts, but as a man of compassion, faith, and enduring honesty. Pat Boone's remarkable music career spans decades and stands out as one of the most productive in the history of popular music. Over the course of his extraordinary journey as a recording artist, it's estimated that he has officially recorded more than 2,600 tracks. This staggering number not only highlights his incredible work ethic and dedication to his craft, but also shows his versatility and productive output. To put this achievement into perspective, very few artists, regardless of genre or time period, have managed to create such a vast collection of recorded songs. Boone's extensive discography reflects an artist who consistently delivered new music to his audience, often covering a wide range of styles, from pop and country to gospel and standards, thus securing a lasting legacy in the music industry. The sheer volume of his recordings also suggests countless hours spent in studios, collaborations with talented producers and musicians, and a constant drive to evolve and appeal to a broad audience. Throughout his career, Pat Boone achieved significant commercial success with 38 of his singles breaking into the coveted U.S. Top 40 charts. This impressive number of charting hits solidifies his place as a major figure in American pop music, especially during the 1950s and 1960s when he was at the height of his popularity. Among these 38 hits, he reached the #1 position on 6 occasions, a clear testament to his widespread appeal and how much people loved his music. Reaching the top spot on the charts symbolizes not just commercial success but also cultural impact, as these hits became defining songs of their era, played extensively on radio stations and influencing other artists. Boone's ability to consistently place singles in the top 40 reflects both his musical talent and the smart promotion and management behind his career.